Greetings, Sentinels fans. There are numerous fun and impressive environments in this game. Too bad Megalopolis turns it into an exercise of frustration. So let's talk about it, shall we? Megalopolis is a large city that grew from the fictional town of New Colchester, Connecticut. It is the home of America's finest legacy and the location of the Freedom 5 headquarters. It is a technological marvel of futuristic design, and villains are constantly trying to wreck the place. It is the stage for possibly the most superhero fights in the lore of the game, with the possible exception of Rook City, which we will also talk about today. It is such an iconic location and one of the first environments that players will see. For all of those reasons, it's unfortunate that this environment is probably the least enjoyable in the game. Now, why do I say that? Because while this environment is difficult, it is difficult in a way that isn't very fun. Difficulty in of itself is neutral. Most people will figure out where their comfort zone is in terms of difficulty and adjust their games accordingly. Because of how modular the game of Sentinels can be, this won't always matter all that much. With easy villains, tough villains, strong heroes and weak heroes, and weird situations where things can be very hard or very easy. No, the issue here is where the difficulty comes from. Now, most of the cards in the Megalopolis deck are pretty alright. Impending Casualty is normally a non-issue, really only resulting in a single card discard unless you are really unlucky and it gets played outside the environment turn. Targeting civilians is a nasty area of effect card, but otherwise it's fine. Police Backup is a card that is almost always strictly beneficial to the heroes. The Plummeting Monorail creates a situation where heroes must decide to focus on that or let it hurt them and their opposition. Cramped Quarters Combat is a fun card that makes the whole board state just a bit more dangerous for a round. Rooftop Combat does a similar thing, but it also destroys other environment cards, and prevents other environment cards from being played, and it stays in play until villain character cards are dealt 10 damage in a single round. Remember this card, we'll get back to it. Now, while Impending Casualty is, in practice, a little boring, all these cards are perfectly fine for an environment deck. It's the remaining cards that are a problem. They all run on a theme, too. One card prevents heroes from playing cards, one card prevents heroes from using powers, and one card prevents heroes from drawing cards. What's more, if you want to get rid of some of these cards, you have to either use some environment destruction or have each hero discard a card at the start of the next environment turn. This pretty much guarantees that you need to spend time controlling the environment, because there's a possibility that you might end up with a hostage situation or paparazzi on the field at the same time as traffic pileup. This is really dangerous to a hero party, because they could end up in a situation where they can't do anything. It also doesn't help that traffic pileup has hit points instead of the same method of getting rid of it that the other two cards have. I get that it was possible to prevent a situation where if heroes have no cards, then it's impossible to get rid of, and that is a very real possibility in the core game. However, not every hero has easy access to damage. Sure, Rock can spew fire all day, but Wraith needs to use equipment and Tachyon needs to use one-shots in order to deal damage. In the core game, depending on your hero setup, a poorly timed traffic pileup can completely wreck your team. With the others, you can at least wait a round or two to draw some cards to get rid of them. You need to be prepared for traffic pileup. But even so, there is an issue of design philosophy here. Generally speaking, if you want to artificially increase difficulty, nerfing a player is not the best way to do it. For this reason, I do wish to bring up Rook City. Rook City came out in the first big expansion for the game, and it certainly does not pull its punches. Compared to the 4 cards of major concern in Megalopolis, Rook City has 7, almost twice the amount of nasty cards. The difference here, however, is instead of limiting the players, they boost the enemy. Rook City offers the villain many extra card plays, almost exclusively attacks the heroes, and only offer a couple of benefits which don't do a whole lot to mitigate the nastiness. But players look much more fondly on Rook City for 2 reasons. First, Rook City does not present itself as hero-friendly like Megalopolis does. I doubt anybody can look at this deck and think that it's not out to get you. The second thing is that nerfing a player is an action that will certainly elicit groans of annoyance from players. Players know what their capabilities are, and forcing them to limit themselves is not going to be fun for most people. On the other hand, boosting the bad guy can create the "oh shit" reaction, causing players to scramble to meet this new obstacle. Granted, some players will not find this fun either, but for many it will invigorate them, make them try harder. Well, okay, so these cards are difficulty presented in an annoying way. That's all well and good, but what are the chances of actually running into them? Well, there are a couple of factors here. It has been my experience that games of Sentinels generally take around 10 rounds to either win or lose. At least that's what it seems like whenever I actually pay attention to the round count. So barring any shenanigans, roughly 10 environment cards will be played in a single regular game. Each environment deck has 15 cards in it, so in a normal game, you will go through about 2/3 of the deck. Dang it, Sentinels, why are you making me do math? So with 2 copies of Hostage Situation and 1 of each other card, you have 4 cards out of 15. So running under some averages, while it is possible that you will never run across these cards in a game, it would shock me if you didn't. And of course there is the other factor, that being rooftop combat. Unlike the other factors that mess with the environment deck, this is something that screws with the environment deck that is built into it. Rooftop combat clears the environment section and prevents more environment cards from being played. For the player that doesn't like dealing with the environment, this might encourage them to turtle up, focus down on other threats, and only deal a small amount of damage to the villain in order to keep the card around. Then, when the heroes are ready after preparing for a few rounds, they spring and fight, taking advantage of the damage boost and knocking the villain away. This is the strategy I tend to employ when I can. But then again, rooftop combat is only 1 card out of 15, and you might not get the opportunity to take advantage of it. So it's not really enough of a mitigating factor, especially since 10 points over the course of a round is a pretty low margin of error there, especially for large teams. Like, think about it. If you hit the bad guy 5 times for 1 point of damage, it gets boosted to 2, so therefore 5 pings will kill the card. That is something Chrono Ranger can do in 1 turn, not even bringing other heroes into the mix. It is really easy for this card to be destroyed, even by accident. So while most of Megalopolis is fine, you're probably going to be spending at least 1 turn doing either nothing or not fighting at full capacity. And sure, they make an effort to try and mitigate that effect, both with something that prevents bad things from happening and a couple of cards that can only be good for you. It's just a bit too little. And because the effects here can be such a problem for hero teams, it kind of exaggerates how bad they feel to play. And that's the big thing here. It's not about the difficulty, it's about the fun. This is difficulty that prevents fun, whereas Rook City is difficulty that encourages more fun, because it makes your opposition harder. And there it is, the least well-made environment in the game. I hope you have enjoyed this exploration. What was that, Mr. Trumps? Oh, Mr. Chomps wants you to like and subscribe. And you don't want to disappoint Mr. Chomps now, do you? I hope to see you again soon. Take care, friends. Impending casually. The most casual of the impendingness. Impinging. It's now impinging casualty. Dear Lord, this is going to be a short one. Probably going to be my shortest yet.